particularly interested in the business issues that might be coming our way, and we'd certainly have the opportunity to ask you some questions after that.
Okay. Stand up right here if that's okay with you all. Appreciate you all coming out. It was the Monday after 4th of July. Hope you all had a great holiday weekend. I got some time to spend with my kids, which I don't get as much of that anymore as I used to, but we had a lot of fun. Got to spend some time out on Lake Ouachita, which is one of our treasures here in this area. Just to give you an update on the campaign, if you haven't heard, I won the primary. I'm the Republican nominee, which is a good thing. Had tremendous support here in Garland County. Garland County actually made up 30% of the vote in the 4th district, and I won Garland County by right at 74%. So Garland County came through huge for me in the primary. I'm a lifelong resident of here. I was born and raised out the eastern part of the county. Went to high school at Fountain Lake, where my kids go to school right now. I feel like we all kind of know each other, but I'll give you a little bit of my background. I went to the University of Arkansas, where I studied engineering, walked on and played football for the Razorbacks for 4 years. My first job out of college was with Rosslyn Foods down in Stuttgart. I was the plant engineer there. I got the opportunity to come back to Hot Springs in '92, where I went to work at Mid-South Engineering. I'm now a part owner in that business, and we've done a lot of work, not just in Arkansas and the 4th district, but all across the southern United States and in other countries, literally all over the U.S. if you look at it, but most of our work has been primarily in the southeastern U.S. I went back to school and got a master's degree in forestry from Yale University, where I studied finance and economics, was what my emphasis of study was there. I did that primarily because Mid-South's work is predominantly in the forest products industry. And that's served me quite well working with our clients there in the business that we do. Obviously, Garland County is very near and dear to my heart. I've seen it. I was born here in '67. I've seen it grow and develop. I've seen downtown look a whole lot worse than it looks right now. Actually, it looks good in perspective to how it was part of the time when I was a kid growing up, even though there's some buildings that obviously need some renovations. I was excited to be down at the announcement last week. We talked about modifying some codes and loosening up on the permits to allow some development downtown. I'm also excited about some of the recent announcements of people purchasing buildings there, and the agreement with the Park Service that Pat McCabe and his wife's doing to do they got a 60-year lease to do the little boutique bed and breakfast. I think that's going to be a good thing for downtown, a good thing for Hot Springs. But you know what we need here mostly are people that have jobs, and that's not just true in Garland County. It's true all across the 4th district. We have a 9.4% unemployment rate in the 4th district of Arkansas. That's higher than any congressional district that touches it in Arkansas or in other states. And it's confusing to me why we have such a high unemployment rate when we've got so many resources and so much potential to have a fabulous economy here in the 4th district. We've got tremendous timber resources, we've got agriculture resources, we've got water, which is becoming a more and more important resource, we've got oil and gas and other minerals, and we've got all the components there that are necessary to develop what I call core businesses that would allow our economy to grow all across the 4th. If you've been paying attention, the 4th district gets bigger every 10 years geographically. The population stays equal with the other districts, but because we have so many people leaving the 4th district, geographically it's growing. When I talk to folks in South Arkansas, they want to know what can we do to get the geographic size of the 4th district more like it used to be. I said the only thing we can do is get more people to move to the 4th district. The only way we can get more people in the 4th district is create an environment where there's more jobs. And more jobs and more people in the 4th district benefits not just families they're involved in those kinds of jobs, but it benefits one of our main industries here in Garland County and Hot Springs, which is tourism, because people have more disposable income to travel here and do the nice things that we have to offer here in Hot Springs. So my philosophy on government is that the smaller it is and the less of it we have and the more freedom we have in the private sector, the better our economy is going to do and the better we're going to do as citizens. That kind of boils it down small and simple, but that's my outlook on the way I've served on the school board, the way I've served in the state legislature, and the way I plan to serve in Congress when elected to do that. Garland County will be as important or more important in the general election as it was in the primary election. If you look back at the last two election cycles, I believe it was 184,000 votes were cast in the 4th District in 2010 and 288,000 in 2012. So 2012 obviously was a presidential election and had higher turnout, but in both of those, Garland County accounted for about 15% of the total vote. And when you look at the 4th District with parts and pieces of 33 counties, that's a significant percentage of the vote. Garland County, the last two election cycles, has been about 58% Republican. If you look at the 4th District as a whole, the statisticians say that if it just says Republican versus Democrat on the ballot, the Republicans will win by 15 or 16 percentage points. I have a very formidable candidate in James Lee Witt. He's been supported by President Clinton. We're not going to take anything for granted. We're working extra hard, doing the things we need to do to get out and meet voters across the district to share our conservative message and to win the election. That's what we plan to do in just a little under 4 months from now. That was a realization I had on 4th of July, was November 4th is the election. It's only 4 months away. So there's not any kind of a break or downtime. I could talk a lot more, but I learned more when I listened to you guys. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on what's important, not only to Garland County and Hot Springs, but to the 4th District, and what you expect from your congressman. I've been privileged to serve on the Metro Partnership Committee here. I think I would say this even if Jim wasn't here, we've got a great resource in Jim Fram, spearheading up the organization, and I don't know if y'all saw his op-ed today, but good article, and look forward to working with this group and groups all across the 4th District to do what we can from a policy standpoint to create an environment where the private sector can thrive and grow jobs. Don's here. We've got issues with the Dodd-Frank Act, things that affect your business. All of our businesses, from real estate to small businesses trying to get loans to carry on business. So, any questions y'all got of me?
I have a question.
All right.
You really elaborated on creating the need to create a job-friendly environment within the 4th District.
Right.
To create jobs, to promote growth, people moving, economic development. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on specific factors that might go into creating a job-friendly environment within the 4th District.
Not just in the 4th District, but across the country, we've got some overburdensome regulations, whether that's things like the Dodd-Frank Act, some of the EPA rules, quite frankly, just some of the things that this administration does with the executive orders, trying to enforce EPA rules with the latest carbon emission rules that EPA is trying to impose. You know, we've got a very expensive coal power plant, the Turk facility in Southwest Arkansas, that could impact that. It could impact White Bluff over at Redfield. And as you drive electricity prices up, it drives up the cost of manufacturing, makes us less competitive with other states and other countries. So we need to get control of the regulatory environment and do things that are sensible, that protect the safety of workers and protect the environment, yet do it in a sensible way that allows manufacturers and producers to be competitive in the marketplace. And Obamacare is another one of those. We go down the list of the regulations, and if you haven't been personally impacted or know somebody that's been personally impacted by the recent changes in the healthcare law, just wait, because it's affecting all of us in certain ways.
That was a very tough issue for our legislators to vote. I mean, there were pros and cons to both sides of that deal, but as a business owner, I can tell you it's been a screwed up mess for small businesses. And so I don't envy anybody that had to make that choice as a legislator, but all the different information, I mean, it said hospitals were going to close. But I got 6 or 7 employees that couldn't find insurance. And now their insurance is 3 times higher than it was. So they had insurance before and now they don't. I mean,
And part of the Medicaid expansion in Arkansas did away with a program that allowed people to buy insurance at a lower cost. It was a waiver that the state had through Medicaid that they gave up in the Medicaid expansion. But whether it's Medicaid expansion or the Obamacare extension, all of that came about through the Affordable Health Care Act. And all of these changes are a result of Congress passing the Affordable Care Act, the President signing it into law. I hear people say, well, you know, it's the law now, we can't do anything about it. And I say we can do something about it. We need to get rid of it and start over with real health care reform. You know, we passed prohibition in this country and repealed it. We passed a constitutional amendment and repealed it. So I know we can take a law that Congress passed and get rid of it and start over with a program that's more about quality health care and access to health care than it is about political power and another entitlement program. And there are successful programs out there. One that I would support is a block grant program for Medicaid. And it's where states go to the federal government and they say, you know, we'll take less money than we took last year, but in exchange for that, we want a global waiver where we can develop our Medicaid program that meets the needs of our state. And it's been proven when these block grants with global waivers are implemented, it saves money and provides better services for those who are truly in need on the Medicaid side. That's a more sensible approach to healthcare reform than just the blanket Medicaid expansion proposed by the Affordable Care Act. It would not only one way it would cut costs is it allows the state to have more control over how those Medicaid dollars are spent. So it forces the states to be more strict, may not be the right word, but more prudent on getting rid of the waste, fraud, and the abuse, which makes up a large part of government health care expenditure. And we've all seen what's happened with the VA, and I'm afraid that's where we're headed with the Affordable Care Act. I've done work in the UK, actually back at the time when the US was looking at passing the Affordable Care Act, and the people in the UK are not very fond of the national health system, at least the ones that I talked to weren't. And some of the same things that we're seeing to start happening where you can't get an appointment with a specialist, and it actually created a larger segregation of healthcare services over there because the ultra wealthy people built their own private hospitals and went and hired the disenfranchised doctors in the public health system to come work in their private healthcare system. So if you're on the government health care, you'd have a long wait list if you thought you had cancer or heart disease, whereas if you were a member of this private hospital, you get in to see the best doctors. And I think we'll see more things like that as we continue down this road with the Affordable Care Act, more rationing of services and higher costs.
You mentioned the block grant. I wasn't really familiar with that. It was proven that it could help reduce costs. Other states did.
Yeah, Rhode Island did that, and they're a smaller state, but it significantly reduced their cost and provided more satisfaction and better services for the Medicaid beneficiaries when they did it. You know, Medicaid was like a lot of government programs. It was started with good intentions. It was for the aged, the blind, and the disabled, and now it's for a whole bunch of other stuff. We're actually giving Medicaid services to working age, able-bodied adults. And who doesn't think that we should have a program to help the aged, those in nursing homes that obviously can't work, the blind and the disabled? That's what Medicaid was set up for, but it's grown into,
Well, the definition of disabled has changed significantly over the years, so today it's so much more lenient to become disabled, I guess, so we have so many more disability claims, it's incredible.
Yeah, and then serving in the legislature, hearing all the anecdotal evidence of the waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid system, you hear stories of people, going out and filing for Medicaid disability, and then their buddy files for Medicaid disability, and Medicaid pays for in-home services, so they hire each other to be the in-home care provider. Just stories like that in themselves are not the major problem, but you multiply that over and over with multiple people doing it, and it is a big problem. The Government Accountability Office estimated that 9.4% of the payments in Medicaid were improper payments. Some estimate that number as high as 20 to 30%. If you look in Arkansas, where we have at the time of the $5.8 billion Medicaid program, that's $50 million for every percent of waste, fraud, and abuse in the program. If you look at 10%, that gets into a lot of money real quickly. And I don't think most people realize that our Medicaid program in Arkansas is bigger than our state budget. We have a $5 billion general revenue budget, and our Medicaid program now will be over $7 billion. That's with the federal money coming into the state. All right. Thanks for coming down.
Explain if it's state or if it's federal that does the free phones for if you're on.
My understanding is that's a federal program, and Congressman Griffin and a congressman from Georgia worked on some legislation to make that much harder to get the free phone.
I mean, just it seems like anybody. I hire people all the time that can't afford a car, and they can't afford a phone, but we'll provide one for them that they can afford their alcohol and their cigarettes. But the government gives them their cell phone.
Yeah, I know that's a point of contention with a lot of people that, these things are expensive when you're paying for them on your own, but there's a lot of them that are given away for free. And I don't know the intricate details of the program, but I've read the stories of the abuse in that as well.
I got a question. Right now, we are faced with an unusable water source for Garland County that is affordable. And 35 years ago, who would have thought with all these lakes around us, we were going to have trouble getting water rights? Do you think that Lake Washita, with government help, will be able to help us get that water in the future?
But this makes common sense that there's a large body of water there, and when you look at how much water is used in domestic purposes, there's a lot of water in Lake Washita that can meet those needs. Getting the policy right so that you keep the pool level where it needs to be for the electrical generation and recreation and all the other purposes, the flow control. I think there could be some tweaks on that. I was reading an article today about water issues out in Texas, and they're having some real struggles down in Texas with water, to the point that they've raised the rates so high that the usage has dropped back significantly, which is the intent of raising the rates, but it's also the water utilities are going bankrupt because people are using so much less water, and the offset in the rates isn't high enough to run the city utility. So water is a very tricky issue. You create a lot of unintended consequences by the way you set up the pricing system on water. But we are blessed with a tremendous amount of water here in Arkansas. A guy told me probably 15 or 20 years ago, he said a great career would be to go to law school and learn about water rights, because that's going to be the battle of the future. And I think we've got to look at the value we've got in these resources here, and we've got to have sound policy that will allow us to meet our needs here and protect that water from being taken by other places. And I've already heard Texas looking this way to get water as well. But for our needs here in the county, it would make sense that there would be enough water in one of these 3 lakes if you could get the policy right to take it off and use that water.
I got a question.
Yes.
Bruce, I'm Neil Harrington. I own a staffing agency here in town, and we talked about high unemployment, talked about job creation. I need people. I've got openings I need to fill, and it's just difficult to have a trained workforce and to recruit to District 4. You got any ideas on a solution for that?
We've got to make it where people have more incentive to work than they do to make a living off of government programs. That number changes, but I've seen numbers, if you don't have a job making $35,000 to $40,000 per year with all the government programs, you're better off to stay on the government programs financially. So when you create incentive for people not to work, people are going to do just what the incentive is they're not going to work. We have high unemployment rate, and we also have a lot of people who have quit looking for jobs here in Arkansas and across the country. We have fewer people working today than we had working in 2007 in Arkansas, total number of workers. We have this high unemployment rate, and I hear that all the time about, I've got jobs and nobody will apply for them. Well, we've got to create an incentive and a work ethic where people will go and take those jobs. And the way we do that is we remove the incentive for them not to work. And the current policy of, I would say, the federal government, and for sure this administration, is to create programs that make people more dependent on the government and less dependent upon themselves. We have the resources to educate people and train people, yet we're motivating them not to work. Those are hard decisions to make, but until we make those decisions, we're not going to reverse that trend.
Right. Yeah, there was some data that came out today that said more than half of Americans are on some kind of, entitlement program.
And what I've realized in the state government is there's no tracking between those programs. So there's not some database that I'm aware of that shows that if people get Medicaid, food stamps, unemployment, how much all of that is together. That's mostly an estimate on how much money people get from those different programs, which almost seems by design that you don't have something that shows, the average person on government assistance is receiving this much government assistance. But I think we would probably be shocked if we knew what that amount of money actually was.
I did have a question. Doesn't that speak a lot to what our minimum wage is? I mean, if you can make more money on government programs than working, doesn't that kind of reflect the wages? Because I mean, if you're not making $35,000, then you're saying it's more apt to be on the government program. I mean, how do we fix that problem? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, minimum wage.
Because minimum wage is a big thing right now too, especially for businesses.
Yeah, and raising the minimum wage isn't going to fix that problem. What it's going to do is take more jobs away. If you go to Walmart, you see the self-checkout lines, you're going to start seeing those in fast food restaurants, and technology will come in and replace those minimum wage jobs like it's always done. So raising the minimum wage is just going to put more companies out of business and make more people unemployed. Minimum wage jobs are an entry point job, and you need people with the work ethic to go in at that minimum wage and work their way up and make more money. But raising the minimum wage is not going to solve our economic issues.
Were you speaking of minimum wage on a state level and federal level? Is there feds be involved versus a state, or should both of them be hands-on?
Well, we've got the federal wage that the president's bumped up to $10.10 per hour for federal employees. We don't need that in the state. That should be a state issue, and it needs to be a hands-off issue as much as possible, and let businesses decide what that wage is, and let the market rule. If you said you can't get workers, you have jobs available, but you can't get people to come in. So how much would you have to raise your wage to get workers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we vary all over the board, you know, and I don't think it would really matter if you paid them $10 or $7.25. They're just not motivated, and they can't pass a drug screen. So I mean, you know, it's tough. It's tough out there. It is tough out there.
And we passed some rules in the state legislature to require drug testing for these in-home service providers for Medicaid benefits, or for all service providers, basically. And it's a question we hear over and over. How come we give out government checks without a drug test, yet to go get a job in the private sector, and a lot of times you have to have a drug test? So wages and pay are best left to the private sector, and to create competition where if somebody doesn't want to work in one place, they go get a job in another place, or better themselves and get a better education where they can get a higher paying job, or be an entrepreneur and start your own business.
Back to the question you alluded to, Bruce, the drug testing. If you're going to get a government check, we hear that offhanded comment all the time. If you're going to get a government check, you ought to have to pass a drug test with the drug problem we have now. Is that ever feasible? Is there may be issues around that would prohibit that? Is that
the random drug testing, I think, is feasible. I played college athletics, and I had to do random drug testing all the time. And it's not where you test everybody, but you have that ability to test, and it can be your day to get tested. So I think taxpayers are tired of funding people with their money to draw benefits, and when they are abusing the system. And I don't have a problem with us holding people responsible. Jim?
Bruce, kind of a two-part question. First of all, thank you very much for your involvement with the partnership and helping us with our economic development program here. I know how busy you are, and we sincerely appreciate that. I guess a two-part question is, we have several federal highway projects either planned or underway or are being planned throughout Garland County in your district and Hot Springs. We also, on the same hand, have several large local employers that depend on import-export business for getting their product out, getting pay coming back in, or getting raw materials in and getting the product back out into market. And I guess my two questions would be, Ex-Im Bank or Export-Import Bank is up for reauthorization right now, and then the Federal Highway Trust Fund, we understand, is just within days of going to zero. Could you address both of those?
Yeah. On the highways, and I got a letter as a state representative a few months ago from Scott Bennett at the Highway Department saying I believe we're going to be $60 million short on the Highway Trust Fund for doing projects that were already on the books in Arkansas. That is a real concern. If you look at the 4th District, we've got some exciting projects that are slated in the 4th District. Interstate 49 that goes from Missouri all the way down to Shreveport. I think that would be huge for western Arkansas to have that transportation system in place. And we've also got Interstate 69 that cuts across the southeast part of the state that would eventually connect Houston to up in Michigan, that 69 corridor would. And then we've got navigable waterways in the 4th District. We've got a large part of the Arkansas River in the 4th District now with redistricting. We've also got the Ouachita River and the Red River, which are all navigable. Those are important components to economic development. Jim, working with companies, one of the things they look at is how they're going to get their products to market. We've got mainline railroads that go through the 4th District, but the highways and the water system are also extremely important. And you have to ask yourself, why do we have a shortfall in the Federal Highway Trust Fund when we're expanding government entitled programs at record rates? And I would say is we've got our priorities wrong on where we need to place our spending. We need to reprioritize money to those infrastructure projects so that we can keep them up and develop new ones, which would help grow our economy, and that produces more revenue for local government, state governments, and the federal government. Again, that's part of growing our economy, and a part that I think the government plays a role in is in developing infrastructure. As far as the Ex-Im Bank, I know that that's important to the 4th District. There's actually 2 or 3 companies here in Garland County that make use of the Export-Import Bank. I would like to get some of y'all's feedback on it, but I know over the years it's been a good program. It's a program that, if my understanding is correct, it doesn't necessarily compete with the private sector because it helps financing where there is not a private sector lender that's willing to get involved. And it's also set up to help small businesses, which are the backbone of our economy. And I will say, if you probably haven't seen the press release, but I got endorsed by the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, which is a big deal. It's the largest small business organization in the country. And they understand my commitment to small businesses and how much that helps the economy grow. You know, if you're a small business trying to export a product, dealing with an overseas entity can be challenging and confusing. And the Ex-Im Bank has been created to help fill the gap for securing credit so that you can export your product. Now, there's been negatives in the news lately about the Ex-Im Bank. People say it's involved in crony capitalism, but I don't know that I buy that. Part of that argument is based on Boeing being a beneficiary of like 80+% of the loan guarantees that the Ex-Im Bank made, but also believe that small businesses account for over 80% of the loans. So if there's problems with the Ex-Im Bank, I think we need to fix those problems instead of just say we're not going to have it anymore, because I think it has served a purpose. It's only been around since the 1930s, but I think it has served a purpose in helping us export. And the 4th District of Arkansas is one of the largest exporters that uses the Ex-Im Bank. I think we average over $75 million a year in exports out of the 4th District. But what are y'all's thoughts on that? That's a question that I wanted to hear from you guys on how important you think the Ex-Im Bank is to our economy. And
Bruce, just off the top of my head, without being specific, we have three companies that we're aware of, and probably others that we're not aware of, that either bring raw materials in from outside the country and turn those into finished products, and finished products are marketed outside the country. And you're absolutely correct. When you're dealing with a foreign nation, that Ex-Im Bank provides that level of security in guaranteeing some of those transactions back and forth. I don't think they compete with U.S. Bank or with Regions Bank or any other banks. I think they actually might give a little strength to local companies doing business with some of those banks by ensuring those transactions back and forth.
From what I've read about them, they've got a really low default rate, but then you read stuff that says there's some funny accounting going on there as well. So those are the kind of issues that I like to research and get involved in. I don't know if, I think the vote's coming up on that in this Congress, so it may not be an issue by the time I get to Congress, but if it is, it's certainly something that I will study and be well informed about, and we'll talk to you all about it to see what the benefits of it are for the 4th District and for our time.
This actually worked out pretty good for Lawrence Rubber. I think over the past 2 or 3 years, they've insured about $7.6 million for us.
I think y'all have been one of the top 3 customers in the district.
Yeah.
AmeriCable down in El Dorado is the largest, and then Keith Smith, the company here in Hot Springs, is the second largest.
Keith Smith is huge, and Berry Plastics does some too.
Right.
So, you can't, we say we want to grow the economy and export stuff. Well, you're not going to just put your stuff on a boat and send it overseas without some guarantee of the payment. And they fill that role. And it's a role that private banks can fill as well if they're willing to step up and do that.
Now, well, and I think you just mentioned that we've never had to actually collect anything, but it's always good to have that safety net.
Yeah.
So it's worked out well.
One more. We're talking about import-export. Right now, we're importing a lot of illegal people into our country. What are your views on securing the border?
I think as far as immigration goes, the very first thing we have to do is gain control of the border. And that's physical control and operational control. 40% of the illegals that are in our country are here because they're on overstayed visas. They come here with a valid visa and they don't get it renewed, and they stay here. So we've got to get operational control where we don't allow people to do that, and we've got to get physical control where we don't allow people just to cross the border unabated. And then we've got to enforce existing immigration laws. You know, immigration worked well in this country for a long, long time, and all of a sudden it's a crisis. And people are talking about wanting to change laws and create amnesty and all these other programs where, I say first thing first, we secure the borders, get operational control, we enforce the existing laws, and then if something needs to be done, we do a step-by-step process on reforming our existing laws if that's something that even needs to be done once we get the control of the border. That also is an issue with, you know, people immigrate to come here to do jobs that a lot of Americans won't do. So we have high unemployment. We're having people come in illegally to do jobs that some of our citizens won't do. So it ties back to your original question a little bit.
So if we don't remember but one thing about Bruce Western, what do you want us to remember? What do you want the voters to know?
My phone number, so you can call me when you're
Your
calling.
phone number.
No, I'm a hometown guy, and I think, you know, Garland County has you could argue what's the heart of the 4th District, but you can't argue the numbers, that there are more voters in Garland County, or more people that vote in Garland County than any of the other 33 counties in the 4th District. When's the last time we've had a congressman from Hot Springs or Garland County? Before I was born, or before I was aware of what was going on in politics. So, yeah, I want to serve all of the 4th District. I want to serve all of Arkansas, and I especially want to serve my local community here. And we have a lot of issues in this area that the federal government are involved in. You've got the lakes that the Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction over. You've got the National Park Service. You've got the Forest Service. We've got infrastructure and highway needs that Congress will be involved in that affect our community and jobs here. So I think it's the right time to have a conservative, homegrown congressman right here from Garland County, and I plan to be that guy. I hope you'll be with me and get on board and help support the campaign.
Any other questions for Representative Westman? Will you be willing to stay for a few minutes afterwards if we do? And
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations on your successes so far to the state election.